Hey Alan, how are you? Welcome. If you could help me out, just tell me if you can hear me okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. That's awesome. Well, I hope you're doing good. You're the first one to join. I kind of threw this together last minute, and I'm curious. Uh, I don't expect that there's going to be a lot of people to this thing. Alan, why don't you email or what do you call it? Go on Facebook if you want, Alan, and send me send me your email address. I'm going to invite you to be a co-host. If do you have a camera and a microphone in your shop where you're at? Hey Pete, welcome. Michael, BBNJ, are those initials and where you live? Do you live in New Jersey, BB? Okay, yeah, Alan, if you can send me your through Facebook, send me your there it is. Okay. All right, and welcome everyone. And I'm going to take just a brief moment, and I'm going to email Alan real quick. And oh, well, thank you, BB. So BB, tell us what does BB stand for? You have my curiosity going now. So just curious, what should we call you, BB, or what should we do there? Somerville, hell, we could meet in the middle and have a drink. All right, I'm going to email Alan real quick. So if you guys, while I'm doing this, why don't you share with us just in text real quick what your latest project was, uh, what your latest project was on your Onefinity while I send an email real quick. BB, Michael, anybody, tell us what you've been doing. A mailbox sign. Okay. Do you have a picture of it? If you do, send it to jrreal, REIHL, at gmail.com. And I'll be happy to let me put it up on the screen for other people to see. And pardon the silence for just a second while I squirt out an email real quick. Get you another knowledgeable person up in here. All right, Alan, check your email, and you should have a separate link that you can follow. So yeah, Alan's getting his JTech going, and so he's going to probably tell us a little bit about how he's doing with that, and So BB, what did you do on your leaning tower? Tell us a little bit about what it was. Was it literally a cylindrical, like the leaning tower of Pisa, or was it something else? And also your holiday lanterns. Curious, did you sell those through the holidays, or were they just for your use, or what'd you do? Oh yeah, Michael. So that's right. Yeah. So you're in a machine shop and making high performance parts, right, for real engines and cars or trucks or whatnot. And so not that it's going to be terribly interesting to you guys, but so I actually started the first half of my career was as an apprentice technician, and then kind of evolved through that and through my career. So have a lot of respect for people who do things in that field, and it's that making camshafts. I would imagine that's really precision work. So that's super cool. All right, and let's add Alan in here. Alan, how are you? Field and that making camshafts. I would imagine that's really precision work. So super cool. Yeah, Michael, CNC is life. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's true. Boy, I tell you, it's been a fun experience getting to know this machine. Alan, let's check your audio real quick. Can you say hello? CNC is life. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, good evening, JR. I'm getting a little reverb here. I need to figure out what's causing that.
Alan, let's check your audio real quick. Can you say hello?
Yeah, good evening, JR. I'm getting a little reverb here. I need to figure out what's causing that.
Yeah, I think it might be that your speakers are feeding back through to the microphone. Any chance that you have headphones that would connect to your computer? And yeah, Dan, you're 100% right. I got my trusty flannel on, and it's almost like we called each other this morning and said, "Hey, let's coordinate."
Okay, JR, is that better?
Yeah, that sounds perfect, Alan. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a big speaker that sits here on my workbench, and I think it was causing a bit of a problem.
Good deal. So, Alan, you just added a JTech laser to your Onefinity, right?
I did. It's
okay.
It's been an interesting adventure.
Yeah.
The problem I had, JR, was that I discovered that there's a lot of information out there, and unfortunately, a lot of it is not up to date.
Right. Yep.
And if you're using, for example, the controller, the latest firmware, I believe, is 1.09, that changes the backdrop of all of that. And so a lot of the information that you'll find, for example, even on the JTech website is incorrect in terms of how you set that up. I sent Onefinity a note and encouraged them to do a little bit of a cheat sheet and a new video, and they said that it was on their do list.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a real service to the group, to the Onefinity crowd, if we somehow had a list of just a tutorial of how to get all of that going.
Yeah. So for the group, Alan and I were exchanging a note on the group earlier today, and my comment was that I had a similar experience. Number one, I found that VCarve, so I use the add-on for VCarve Pro simply because once I get used to a computer program, where the keystrokes are and where all the things are, I try to stay and live within that same software environment. And Lightburn is great, but I just felt like if I could stay in that same kind of grouping of software without having to learn a new piece or new keystrokes or any shortcuts, that I would benefit from that. And but it never fails. I have a tendency to overcomplicate everything, and I tried to go fetch from the JTech site their latest driver or post processor and all that, and it turns out all of it was sitting inside of Vectric ready for me to go. I don't think I really had to do some of the steps that I did, and so I was curious how you were coming along with that. And hey guys, I see that Dave Gatton has joined us, and for those, we'll take a break, Alan. You can have a drink of that bourbon or whatever your beverage of choice is. Dave is a really interesting fella that has had some manufacturing background in his previous career, and is the inventor of something called the Gatton CNC. And I think it's really neat to see and be able to meet people whose minds think at another level, and has been around CNC. Dave, I don't want to get this wrong. If you want to type it in the chat there, how long you've been in the CNC environment, but I'm just very impressed with, it takes a lot of thinking to figure out how to make a CNC kit that the average hobbyist could, build in his or her own garage. And Dave figured that out and was pretty successful with that. And so interestingly enough, Dave and I made a connection. I want to say we started to talk maybe in November or December about a new event that he is, I guess I would say, reinvigorating on his YouTube channel. And if you have not had a chance to, and I would just suggest it because he's got great content, look for Dave Gatton on YouTube and give him a subscribe. Tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, Dave hasn't been nice enough to invite me onto his channel, where we're going to discuss the Onefinity CNC. I guess he noticed the Onefinity as really, I think he properly called it a disruptor in the CNC space, right? The hobbyist machine space. And just, I guess, saw one of my videos, which I was, touched that somebody with as long a reach as Dave has had in YouTube and in this vertical of hobby CNC, reached out. And so we started to talk about the possibility of just coming onto his channel and talking about the experience through the lens of a user, how the machine is going. And so that's going to be tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, and it's going to be probably more structured than this. And to be honest, part of the reason that I decided to throw this together tonight is I needed to double check my software and my video camera and all that stuff. And I thought, what a great excuse to get together with our Onefinity guys and gals, and I could test the software I intended to use, but also maybe collect some of your thoughts about maybe what led you to pick the Onefinity, or what's important to you. So Dave, I see it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It's going to be fun, and I would hope that you guys would really join us when we're through here. I'm going to put a reminder on our Facebook group just so folks don't miss it. And I see Dan Knight. Plaid is a requisite for working in a wood shop. I think if you don't have plaid somewhere in your closet, you gotta check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? So, oh, wait a minute, I see a problem. I have a Onefinity, but no plaid shirts. Uh-oh. All right, well, the only way your plaid golf pants are gonna work is if they also happen to be knickers. They cut off at the knee, right? So, I'm just teasing you, Dan. It's good to see you, and thank you for joining us. And So Dave, if you don't mind, if you're still in there, share with us how long is it that you have been in the CNC space, to kind of give us a primer for what we might be able to expect tomorrow. And hell, I'll tell you something, Dave. If you don't mind, Dave, if I'll put you on the spot, if you're sitting at your computer, I'm gonna send you an invite to come in so you can chat, because I do have some questions for you. So you're about to see it. If you can't join us because you have other commitments, that's fine. But I'll just shoot you that invite, and if you have a moment, then awesome. And if you don't, I understand, because I really just threw this together kind of last minute. But okay, so resume with your JTech. So did you get it mounted, and or are you stuck on the software at this point, Alan, or what do you think?
You know, where I'm at now is I've got it up and running. I've got it working. That I must say that getting it onto the machine and hooked up was a piece of cake. That, you know, I'm impressed with the mount. I'm impressed with the amount of wiring that they give to you in the kit, and so all of that worked really well. I
Okay.
did put some loom over some of all of that wire because there's a significant amount of extension wire to it. So
There is, yeah.
the the laser runs fine. I've tested a bit, and then I use VCarve Pro, as you know, JR. I was considering buying Lightburn. I'm going to hold off on that a while. I feel like I've been drinking out of a fire hose for the last couple of months with all the software that I've been messing with. And so I'm happy to use VCarve. I've got VCarve set up, and I found a little bit of a tangle. If you create a file using VCarve and then the tool path for the laser, you have to be really careful about checking the appropriate post processor.
Yeah.
The way mine is set up, you've got options when you go to create the tool path of which post processor you use, and if you're not careful, you can save it as a spindle file. And what happens is it has a pop-up that expects you to turn the spindle or the router on. And when that happens, a laser fires and it burns a big hole right in the middle of wherever you're hoping to put some text. So I learned quickly that there's you need to make sure that that the extension says G code, not the typical file for.
Yes.
And have you found that, JR, to be the case in the?
Yeah, so for those that are thinking about adding a laser, whether it's the JTech or working with something else, Alan brings up a great point, which is you should be accustomed to, or if you're about to get a machine, maybe you're waiting for arrival, you will export out of your CAD software. So in my case, Vectric also, it's .ngc is what the file ends with. So if you were to save a file to send to your Onefinity, it should be, the name of the file would be project.ngc, where project is whatever you named it. When you create a laser tool path, so if you're familiar, here's your workspace and your tool paths are over here where you would pick a profile. I'm not in the camera. On the upper right, you'd pick a profile pass or a pocket or a VCarve. One of the things that will be there after you license your VCarve add-in will be literally a new tool button to hit, which is the laser tool path. And instead of the normal process when you're done and you're saving that file where it would save as under the post processor, which the one I use is Onefinity inch, I think, for the V-carving, whereas you would need to pick the post processor that says Onefinity laser inch, I believe is what it says. What the hell is all this? I don't know who this guy is, but you gotta go. I don't know. Sorry about whoever that was. I don't know. So, yeah, they're blocked. So I don't know what that shit was. So, so yeah, you do have to be careful that on a laser operation, it comes out of your CAM software as G code, not as, am I saying it right?
Yeah.
G code.
Well, you want the extension that says G code.
Yeah.
which is different than the NGC, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you load that NGC onto the controller, it thinks that the router is there, and so you get the pop-up when you play the file, and it expects you to turn the router on. And in between the time that pop-up shows up and the time that you can get the play button pushed on that pop-up, it's going to burn a hole.
Yeah.
So, and I was a little bit, I must say, I was a little bit surprised that post processor even shows up in the tool path for the laser. And I'm wondering if I perhaps don't have that set up properly in the VCAR. So I'm going to study that a little bit further.
So you didn't have that particular post processor?
I do, but when you begin to save that tool path for the laser, you still have the option of saving it as a .ngc, and it's that extension that will get you into trouble.
Yeah.
You have to use that extension, the file name .g code with the laser, and otherwise you get into a bit of a mess.
Yeah. So I can't remember, and I apologize. So I brought a better PC out to my shop. The one that I usually use to, use Vectric or whatever. It's at its total limit. So processing this video and whatnot wasn't going to work. So I don't have Vectric loaded on this this PC to show you. But yeah, I think it's at the end of the process when you are maybe even naming, right? It's when you're saving the file and you get to pick the post processor, is where you switch that, right?
That's right.
And so are you saying that you do not have the Onefinity laser inch as an option to pick?
No, JR, I actually have it, but
okay.
I have made the mistake of not selecting the proper file.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So the one thing, and this is going to sound really funny, that tripped me up is I did not understand on the first carve or two, because you bring the laser, where's my camera? You bring the laser down to your workpiece, and then it's got to be 1/8 of an inch, and use that little spacer, right? Well,
Yep.
I thought that when you set the 0 to that on your workpiece, that I could then move the head and get it out of the way and do stuff. And I thought when it was going to start, it was going to come right back to the home like we're used to it doing and proceed. But the fact of the matter is that the laser operations will not control the Z. So once you have it set, to the proper place, if you were to move it up 2 inches and then hit your play button, it's going to stay at 2 inches and try to do the laser work from that wrong Z height. So just something to keep in mind. Yeah, sorry, I was getting a message. So yeah, there's just little nuances that I think are kind of different. When you switch over to that laser. Now, what kind of work do you plan to do with that, Alan? How is that going to augment what you've been up to?
I had hoped to use a laser, for example, to do some etching on some polycarbonate and plastics.
Okay.
I had also hoped to highlight some V-carve work that I was doing, and rather than painting, perhaps use the laser on to outline the text itself. I despise paint, and what I've found out is some of this work that I've done recently requires a lot of attention to painting, and it's meticulous work. And to do a really good job, it's quite time consuming. So I hope to apply the laser to some of that to give contrast. For example, I did a carving on some text on some bird's eye maple, beautiful board, and then I painted the V-carved text black, and the painting and preparation for all of that was a great deal of work. And I hope to use that laser to augment that and maybe eliminate some of the painting.
Yeah. So you're still pretty fresh to having installed
Absolutely.
Dan McKnight just asked a great question, and that's one that I have not done yet. So thank you for asking that, Dan. That and maybe for anyone else in the group, the question really is, have you ever V-carved something and then instead of using paint or epoxy to fill it, has anyone in this group here chased after where you V-carved with your laser? I'm just curious if anyone in here has tried that. I have not tried it yet, but I've been curious about it. Just haven't had an application to do it yet. So that's a great question, Dan.
JR, I have not, but I hope to.
Yeah. Who all in the group, if you could just say I do or I don't, as it relates to, do you have the JTech on your Onefinity or on another machine? Just curious who has it. So if y'all could share with us whether you do or do not have a laser mounted to your Onefinity. It's a quiet group. Nobody wants to admit that they do or don't. Okay. All right. So while everybody's being bashful about their laser preferences, what is, Alan? What's the neatest or biggest thing that you have done with your CNC so far? You've had it a few months, right?
Yeah, I got it. I got it in late October, and I spent a lot of time getting the machine set up, and I had a very special table made. So I've not gotten to use it as much as I hope. One of probably the neatest thing I've done is that I did some aluminum work. I'm a hobbyist machinist and a woodworker, and I wanted the CNC for making some brass gears. I'd like to make some big Swiss style hanging wall clocks, and I want to be able to cut some brass. And so I did a little bit of a test on cutting some aluminum, and I was impressed with the rigidity of the machine. So I think that's probably the neatest thing that I've done thus far, is to do a little bit of a testing to see if I could cut aluminum or not.
How does that
piece here? I'll see if you can see it in the camera. You can see the radius on this particular device. I cut this on the Onefinity. I did some of the other machining on a mill, a metalworking mill that I own, but this radius right here was cut using my Onefinity, and I was impressed with the finish that I got and the rigidity of the machine. And that was part of the reason that I chose Onefinity, because I thought that there was a great deal of value in the machine and the accuracy that machine was likely capable of, and I've not been disappointed.
Good, great. So I'm curious, if you hold that up again, that looks like it's maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. That piece of aluminum.
Oh, this piece is, I'm guessing it's maybe 5/8 of an inch thick.
So when you approach that with your Onefinity, tell us a little bit about, because I'm only used to wood, right? So what were you able to do in terms of a depth of cut or the feed rate?
Yeah, well, the depth of cut, when you're machining aluminum, you want to make sure that your aluminum can heat up, because you're using a lot of energy to make the cut. So that you want to make good chips, and you want to carry the heat away. And if I were doing this on my milling machine for my metalworking machine, I'd use coolant. But of course, I don't want to spray coolant all over my 150. So this was done dry. There was no cutting oil used. So as I remember, you're going to have to forgive me. As I remember, the depth of cut was probably 50 thousandths, 30 thousandths maybe.
Okay.
And so it was multiple, obviously a number of passes to make that happen. And it was set up as not a profile cut, but let me hold it up here properly. It was more of a pocket cut because I put it in there as a rectangle. And so it cut this area out. And I did not use V-carve for that. The tool path for this was made in Fusion.
Okay.
Yeah, Fusion is more friendly for metalworking.
Yeah.
And it has some more advanced tool path, and intelligence in terms of tool path. The bit that I used was something called a AluPower, ALUPOWER, and I have a drawer full of those for metalworking, and they're extremely sharp bits, and they're made for aluminum. And so I stuck a 1/4-inch AluPower bit in there, and the tool path was done using Fusion. And to be very open about it, one of my sons is an expert in Fusion, and so he's my mentor.
Yeah.
And when I need help, I pull him in, and he helped me create the tool path to do that cut, and it worked extremely well. By the way, he has I bet you've probably heard of Haas before, a Haas milling machine. He owns a Haas, and he uses it in his engineering business that he has. And so he does his stuff often. So he was able to help me do that. I think what's important to me about this piece is how demonstrative it is about the capability and the accuracy of the 150.
Yeah.
The machine is really stiff. Some folks don't believe that you could cut aluminum on it. I think if you stay near the corners where you minimize the deflection, and it was perfectly fine. And so it did a very nice job of pocketing that end off of this thing and then making a very nice curved section.
So Dave just mentioned that looks like a pretty nice, finish that you got there on that radius. I'm curious to ask, did you do a lot of post work? Did you clean that up? Did it require a lot of cleanup?
You're familiar with Scotch-Brite.
Yeah.
Dave, I used some red Scotch-Brite. I have boxes of that stuff, and I just took some Scotch-Brite and hit it with it. The finish was very nice. This camera is not going to show you the real finish of it, but it turned out very nicely. You can see where it did the steps in the tool path, but it worked really well. I have a couple of sterret gauges that drop into this, and this is used on my milling machine to trim the vise on my mill. By the way, I can also use it in the 150 to do some tramming with it as well, because this is a 1/4-inch spindle here.
So is that radius meant to hold the heads of the dial indicators?
Yeah, it does, and I'll show you what that looks like. Let me pull one out of the drawer here. This is the indicator that goes in it. I have two of these, and those drop right in there, like so. You can see how I'll show you the back. That radius was made so that it fits those sterret gauges.
Oh, that's
So
great.
there are two gauges that go in there. And so it's strictly a tramming device.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, and I think you said it. How would you, on a scale of 1 to 10? I know that you chased it with a little, uh, Scotch Brite, which I think is probably normal and yeah, a normal process for that. But would you say that you had to chase it more than you thought you would, meaning the surface finish, or
Less, far
less than you?
less, far
Okay.
less.
Well,
That
that's great.
was only scrubbed for 60 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it just brightened it up. It had a very nice finish coming off of the. Now, part of that is due to the mill bits the mill bit that I use, and I didn't have a line on those bits, but my son uses a lot of them in his work, and they're very very sharp, and he runs them really fast on the Haas and some prototyping work that he does.
Okay. I see. So I'm curious. I think you get a lot of passes out of 10,000. Let me. Oh, I forgot I could pop that up. Dave Gatton showed me a few things about this software today, which I appreciate. So Michael says, I think you get a last pass of 10,000. Yeah, I suppose you could do that. Yeah. I don't know about machining metal and how that would work out. So, um, what would you say to that, Alan?
Yeah, you can run a finishing pass on it. I may not use 10 thousandths. I may use something less than that, and I may also be sure to use a climbing cut when I do it, so that it helps out.
Good. So I'm curious for the group, who else uses your Onefinity or any CNC at home for the purposes of machining metal? Does anyone here do that? I can tell you that I do not, and not because I don't think the machine I've got could do it. I just don't have that type of work in my workflow. So, and yes, Rick Corchain, you did forget your flannel shirt, buddy. I don't know what's going on with you. You blew it, man. And in a moment, I'm gonna invite Cody from Cody's CNC, who is a aerospace engineer by trade. And for those of you that have been to some of the CNC groups on Facebook, he has done a really neat thing, which is started up a bit manufacturing company. I've got every bit that he makes, and again, I have to admit that some of them I haven't even used, but I'm just in love with the entrepreneurial spirit, right? So I think it's great when people start out a new business, and it was a way of supporting them. Now, what I have found is that they're awesome bits. So if you haven't tried them, it's Cadence Manufacturing, and his name is Cody. So, okay, so Michael has cut brass, cuts very well. Michael, if you could follow up with that. Now, Michael works not too far from me in a machine shop where and I don't know what part he handles. He might do the whole entire thing, but they machine camshafts for engines where Michael works, and so he doesn't get enough of that CNC work Monday to Friday. So he goes home and has a Onefinity at the house. And so I am curious, Michael, how do you use that? Are you I don't know what brass would be used in a project, or making other piece that would go into something else. So I'll be curious to see what type of work you're doing. And looks like Rick is planning on trying aluminum. Oh, you ordered your Onefinity today. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I know that when you're sitting while Michael's typing the answer about what he is doing with brass. My best suggestion, Rick, I don't know if you're new to CNC or if maybe you're replacing it on a different machine, but I can tell you that it feels like it might take a bit for that machine to get there, right? It surprised me how quick the time went because you've got to build a table and learn the software. Or at least that's what I had to do. I didn't have experience with CNC software in the past, so I tried to take the time, to really figure that out. But that time, whatever your timeline is for whatever machine you bought, it's gonna fly right on by. So that's awesome. So Rick, you're brand new to CNC, and that's great. I can tell you this, one of the major reasons why well, there's a few reasons, but number one, I went and saw some competitive machines in my area. And one of the first things that I asked about is what people liked or didn't like. And those belts and the wheels were one that really caused people a lot of indigestion. So I could just tell right away I wanted to not start my CNC experience with something that was going to frustrate me. But secondly, a lot of guys, and I don't remember which machine it was, said that some of these machines take, 10 to 16 hours to put. I mean, you literally put every piece together, and I also knew I didn't want to do that. Not that I couldn't, but I just didn't want to. So the good news, Rick, is that you're not going to have any of those frustrations with your first CNC machine. So that's going to be awesome. Dan says you can't put metal through the planer when you mess up. Yeah, you're right. There's been a number of projects that I have. Let's just say it didn't turn out the way I hoped it would, but I've got a wood eraser over there that if the wood's thick enough, it goes right through and gets a new face on it. So so that's good. Okay, so Michael says I have cut it to use as inlay for a sign. Now I think that would be really pretty. I think that would be a great use and a super combination of different materials. Wood and brass in particular. I'll bet you that came out very nice. Did you complete that project, Michael, or is that still in progress? I'm curious. I'm curious what you did there. And Rick mentions, so he got the X50 Journeyman, great, and need to decide on software for sure. So not that I want to change your mind, and listen, I'm not sponsored by anybody, so I've got no dog in this fight, but I can tell you there sure seems to be a lot of support for Vectric out there with people who have made a bunch of videos about how you go about starting, and one of them in particular, and Rick, you may have found him already, is Mark Lindsay, Lindsay. And what I loved about him is that he really starts from the beginning and has videos that frankly start out at the very first step. Now there's probably also some other great ones, and I just can't think of who else off the top of my head for the other pieces. I like Carveco or Easel Easel might even be a free one, I'm not sure, but I haven't heard great things about Easel. Alan, you said you're using Vectric, right?
That's correct, and some Fusion.
Fusion, yeah. I used Fusion when I was 3D printing, and I found it a very steep learning curve. I finally got there, but I was building very, very simple stuff. But I guess, am I right in saying that for machining, they have something specific called the adaptive cutting path that is particularly suited for metal for sure, right? Is that a fair?
That's fair, and I'm no expert in Fusion. I'm fortunate to have somebody that can bail me out in a moment's notice because I simply call my son. But Fusion is a little bit what I would call deep and wide. I like V-carve a lot. I find that once you get into it, it becomes fairly straightforward. And I agree with you, JR. I think there are a lot of great tutorials out there. And I personally enjoy the tutorials that Vectric's, the company, has produced. You can find things that are really succinct and straight to the point in their tutorials. And by the way, they add notes because often when you go from one version, if you find a tutorial that was premised on version 9, and it's up to version 11 now. Version 9 is different than version 11. And for example, the gadget for making keyholes, if you're not careful, you'll find a tutorial on making keyholes and a wooden sign that was done 2 or 3 years ago that is not a good thing for the latest version, because there's something called a gadget that makes a keyhole very quickly and makes it much easier, and that came along after version 9. So I find that to be the case on a lot of this CNC stuff around Onefinity and the software. Is it's a little bit of a struggle to make sure you're looking at the latest stuff.
Yeah. So, and Dan mentions that he started with easel and is very user-friendly, but the free version doesn't allow V-carving. So, yeah, so I think that is one of the limitations that I heard. And I would just tell you, Rick, in case you decide to look at V-carve, just keep in mind there's a few different versions. There's desktop. I hope somebody check me on this, but I think desktop limits you in the workpiece size to 24 by 24. Desktop or V-carve Pro doesn't have any of those size limitations. And then there's something called Aspire, which is, I think, about as advanced as you could get, where you can make your own 3D carvings and so forth, your own designs. Am I about on it there, Alan, do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. I know that there are some folks, though, who have been also very successful with Carveco. And again, there are different versions of that one. There's Maker and Maker Plus, and maybe there's a Pro in there somewhere. I would say that the one advantage that I think for Carveco, especially if you're not committed, like you haven't used it before and you're just buying an official copy, Carveco, I believe, it can be just a monthly subscription if you like, and I don't know the exact price. I feel like it's $15 or $20 a month, perhaps. But it might be a way to go, and I don't know if they lock you in for a certain period of time or any of that stuff, but it might be very interesting to try it out that way first, on a monthly subscription, and then, if you have an opportunity to get to a commitment to a Vectric, and it's just really, it depends on what you like, right? Where the buttons are, how it's laid out. And so I see that we have Cody Elkins has just joined us here. That's fabulous. And Cody, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you. How are you guys?
Well, yeah, we're great. We're just hanging out on a Friday night. You're probably one of the only people I know that isn't cold right now. Tell us, what's the temperature in Phoenix right now?
So it's about 60 degrees right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So okay. I'm running my lathe right now, and I have to turn on the chiller. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better.
Well, it's not usually cold in Charleston, but we're freezing and we got ice this evening. So yeah, I probably should have hopped on a plane and headed out west. So, oh yeah, and Cody, you broke the theme we had going. Everybody had plaid flannels on today, so I forgot to send you the memo. But again, so Dan, it's damn near 70 degrees where he's at, so I guess there's not a lot of flannel going on where he's at. So I gave a little primer, Cody, to kind of your experience as an aerospace engineer, and I may not have gotten that exactly right, but you're somewhere in the aerospace vertical, right? And gave just a little primer about, how I'm really enamored with the fact that you got that entrepreneurial spirit. And, I remember, I think it was maybe close to a year ago, you did your first group buy on the Facebook page, and I don't know the exact timing, and I was excited to jump in, as were a bunch of folks, right? I mean, you sold out that first group buy, I think, like a couple hours, I feel like, or I don't know how to, it seemed really fast.
It was literally like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I had to shut it down because it was becoming too much to manage.
Yeah. Okay. So then since then, you found that there's a lot of appetite out there, right? And
Yeah.
as far as I can tell, so for those that don't know, Cody's, so it's Cadence Manufacturing.
Yes, sir.
Is it cadencemanufacturing.com?
It's cadencemanufacturing.com. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So if you have an interest, you can go check him out. But if you lose sight of that, bit in your memory, I think it's a feather in Cody's cap that Onefinity selected him as a partner, and they are listing his bits on their website as an officially supported partner of Onefinity, and I would be willing to bet that they probably don't do that for just any old buddy. So congratulations to you first for having achieved that, because I do think that that's a big deal. And so my wife, okay guys, my wife, who I affectionately call Dr. Doolittle, we can't pass a stray dog, a stray cat, or whatever. So I'm going to ask Cody to tell us a little bit about why you got started, and just be super casual. We're just hanging out, having a chat. But I got to kick this damn cat out of my shop that she brought in here and put a towel and water and food in here because he keeps scratching at the door like he needs to maybe go. So I don't want him pooping in here. So I need to step away for just a quick second. While so your timing is awesome, Cody. So if you don't care to give us and there's a question from Rick that I'll flash up here, for a set of starter bits. But tell us just a little bit about, why you did that initial buy, and, this was kind of your first foray into that, as I understand it from talking to you, when we first talked a few months ago. And, that took some gumption to do. So I'm proud of you. Not that you were counting on that, but I just think it's awesome that you did it, and, look at your success. So why did you get into it, and all that stuff? So, if you could take a minute while I kick this cat out of here, that would be
Sure.
immensely helpful. So I'm going to figure out how to make you primary somehow in here. Yeah, that's probably going to be.
That's okay.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I'll be right back.
So, as JR kind of mentioned earlier, this thing's been it's been an incredible journey. And to be honest with you, I had no idea it would turn into what it is now with these bits that I, developed and then I shared with the community. As you said before, I've worked in the aerospace and defense industry, my entire adult career. I started off working in a machine shop when I was a teenager, and I was fortunate enough to finish the entire welding program before I graduated high school, and I landed a job as an aerospace welder. And my career just kind of took off from there. That's when I first got exposed to CNC machining. And so, fast forward to where I'm at today, that passion just kind of followed me home. So now I got, lasers right here next to me and machines in the rooms behind me. And I do a lot of like production type work on my machines. And how the whole Jenny bit thing started is, with me working in the aerospace industry, I work really close with a lot of other companies who manufacture custom ground, port tools and toolings that we use on our big machines. And after years of working with them, I just kind of developed that relationship. And when I was actually running a belt-driven machine, and those machines have like zero rigidity. They're horrible. And so I was given the opportunity to just kind of go into my buddy's shop and, work with his engineers and just kind of redevelop tools specific for what I was doing. And a lot of it too, there's other people that were in the Facebook groups that I was talking to, and I was kind of showing them my bits, and we were talking about the compression bits and started discussing about just making a shorter up shear to help manage those rigidity issues I was experiencing. And I just did it, and I did it all for personal use, and it worked well. And then I just shared it with the community, and it literally organically grew from there. All of this has been organic. And so the funny thing is, because I developed the bit, I gave it the part number 8675309 because I thought it was funny and it'd be easy to remember. Well, the cool thing is it was actually the community who named the bits Jenny. And so, and the name just stuck. And ever since then, all the other bits that I've developed and shared with the groups, and they've all been by customer and community like requests. So the down shears, the tapered ball nose, that one was specifically from Onefinity. And I can't tell you just how like truly blessed that I've been, because like I said, I developed the bits for personal use to manage some rigidity issues I was experiencing, and it just took off, and so I'm just hanging on and wanting to do right by the community and do stuff like this and visit with you guys and get to know you and really help where I can. And that's what I love about you. And I love how you have a heart of a teacher, and you love like kind of just like giving back and teaching people. And so when you sent me a message today and asked me to be a part of it, I was like, heck yeah, I'm totally excited. So thanks for having me on, and I'm excited to be here. So.
Yeah, well, and so I see how much you jump in the forum or the Facebook group and all that stuff, and I think that's the one unique thing about this particular group, right? And I can't remember if Dave and I were talking about it, or if it was Dave and I this afternoon. So during my research for which machine I was going to buy, right, and that part of it included a lot of online, and I would look at different Facebook groups or the user forums for the machines. I'm not kidding, the first 10 posts of, and I'm not here to dog other machines, right, but the first 10 posts would be, my machine shuts off in the middle, and I could get all these, all this EMI type of, suggestions, or I got this problem, or I got that problem. It was literally the first 10 things you saw, and you go to the other manufacturer, and it was really pretty much the same. And I went to the Onefinity forum when I found it, and I found it because of YouTube. I think it was Ben Meyer's video, and of all the ones, I'm breaking up with my girlfriend, the one machine versus the other. I thought it was funny, and it caused me to go look, right? And when I looked at the Onefinity Facebook group, the first 10 pages were all, look at this beautiful thing I made, or look at this project, or, hey, can you do this with this machine? Like a general question from, and I had some of those when I was first researching. And it wasn't really, now the company will respond, as we all have seen, but it was an unbelievably supportive community that was in there and helping each other, and hey, this is what I did, or that's how I approached that thing, or whatever. And I thought, wow, this is a unique community that's in here. And so frankly, I've always enjoyed, helping people where I can, right? But the YouTube thing started on a total lark. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen Izzy Swan, his YouTube channel. So he's maybe got 800,000 subscribers. He's kind of calls himself a redneck, engineer, but he's actually done a lot of process improvement and jig works and so forth for manufacturing companies. He's a super, super smart guy. I actually went and visited with him for an advertising opportunity for my business, is how I started a conversation. I sat at his house for 3 or 4 hours or something talking about that. But then we got into woodworking, and of course, I'm a woodworker, so I got pictures in my phone of, well, this is what the stuff I do, and just kind of started a friendship. And then I go to Tennessee where I have another business, and I run into a guy at the hotel where I stay when I go there. Well, this is a guy that's got 100,000 subscribers. I overhear him talking about it at the bar, right? And so I start a conversation with him. I said, that's just weird. You have a YouTube channel. I was just with a guy 3 days ago, got a big channel. I tell him who it is. He goes, oh, hell, I know Izzy. And he calls him right there, and we get on this, FaceTime thing. And, so long story short, as guys always do to each other, the challenge gets issued. Oh, well, JR, we've seen your work. You should start a YouTube channel. You'll have fun. I'm like, nah, I don't have time for that. And they didn't let it go, and probably 2 months later is when I did it, and my very first video was a Onefinity review, which if I were to look at the landscape of my videos, that's the #1 most viewed video that I have. And I got so much feedback from people who watched it that were saying, that it was helpful, or they had the same thoughts that I was having. So it kind of validated the way I was thinking about approaching which machine was right for me. But it really kind of just invigorated hey, people seem to like that, so it motivates you to do more. And I just think it's great. And as I mentioned in that video, I got a lot of information from people who were willing to share it on YouTube, and I really just felt like I owed something back, right? Because Onefinity was so new at the time, there wasn't a whole ton of content, right? They had about a year from the launch of opening the order bank, and probably 8 or 9 months since the first machine hit the wild. So I just felt like what an opportunity to share. I wasn't one of the first guys. I ordered in September or October, and they opened up orders, I think, in May or June or something. But so I wasn't in the initial batch, but early enough that there wasn't a lot of machines out there. I just thought it would help people, and I just enjoy it. So so let me pause here. Hey, Mike Penson's here. That's great. He does a lot of cool stuff. He's had his machine for a few months. I love seeing what he's doing. So welcome, Mike. And Brian Lape. So for those that don't know, we did a Q&A session, which was kind of a little more structure than this, where Lane Mims and Mitz, I'm going to blow this last name, Pelliaccioti. I apologize, Mitz, if you watch this later. I hate that I just did that to your last name.
I just call him Mr. Mitz.
Yeah.
Mitz.
So we put together a little thing at the beginning of December that was meant to be an hour, and we brought up 3 topics that we thought would help a person that was new to the Onefinity, and then we kind of left the rest open to Q&A. And we had to cut it off at like 2 hours and 20 minutes because it just kind of went and went and went. But we had a blast doing it. And so if that's what you're talking about, Brian, so we don't, unfortunately, maintain, and I don't collect anybody's emails just for privacy and all that stuff. So what I would say is you got a couple of things. Keep an eye on the Facebook group, because I'll typically post it there if we're going to do it. I just talked to Mitz this afternoon, now that the holidays are over, to schedule future ones, and we feel like probably once a quarter, and we had initially talked about doing it in February. So what I'd suggest are 2 things. You can keep an eye on the Facebook group, because we would announce that it was going to happen there, or you can go to Trade Skillers Anonymous and subscribe and hit the little bell, and you would be notified if that's going to come out later. But I don't keep or maintain anybody's email address, because I just don't want to do that. And Mike says, good dude, he even makes home delivery. So all right, so did you bring him his bits? Or did you guys meet up?
I'm not sure who posted that one.
That's Mike Penson.
Yeah, actually, I think yeah, I can't remember exactly. It was somewhere in Chandler, but I remember stopping by his house. I know he was busy, and so I'm pretty sure I dropped it off on his front porch.
Okay.
So if that's the same Mike I'm thinking about, then
okay. Yeah. It must be. I know he's in Chandler, so yeah.
So perfect. Yep.
Yeah. And then Rick, who's really new, and I think Rick said earlier that he just ordered his machine. Yeah, he said earlier that he just ordered his Onefinity today, and so he's ordered a 2-pack of your 2-pack of the Jennies. Rick, what I'm going to tell you is you're going to love this, and I'm not going to do this justice. Go look at Trade Skillers Anonymous. I'll tell you, I did a video, and I don't know if it came out the way that I intended it. I hope it did, but what you would find in that video, so the thing that I tried to illustrate, maybe I didn't do a superb job is, so this is a Jenny bit, and this is some other bit, and they both are compression. So the first little bit of that cutter, just dropped my earbuds. The first little bit of this cutter, and am I right, Cody, that it's the first 100,000ths, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Is the up cut, and the rest of this bit is down cut. And I can tell you, I have not found any other bits that are anywhere close to that. This is a more traditional one that you're going to find, without really looking too deep at the geometry. But the upcut portion of this bit, goes all the way down. It's either 200 or 250 thousandths of an inch before you get to the downcut portion. And the reason that that's important is that most of us kind of hear on the internet that if you're using a 1/4 inch bit, then it's traditional that you would consider 125 thousandths depth of cut to not overstress the bit or the machine. Now, I don't necessarily follow that, but that's a lot of the advice you're going to hear. And if that's what you do with this type of a bit, you'll never get past the transition, meaning you'll never take advantage of the nature of it being a compression bit, where the Jenny bit, because that transition is way, way, way short right there, you could do 125 thousandths depth of cut, and you're taking full advantage of the compression nature of the bit. How bad did I botch that description? Is that close?
Good job.
Okay. So it's really easy.
JR, your video is very, very helpful. I watched that one before I began buying a bunch of bits, and you saved me a bunch of money and got me directed in the proper direction. So I really recommended that video to folks that are just getting into this journey with their Onefinity machine. Is take a look at that, and it's going to be very informative, and it's going to be helpful. It's
well, thank you. I really didn't know how to approach that, other than I painted a piece of wood black and just kind of went nuts with different bits, and I tried to explain it well. But it's funny. I'm not used to being in front of a camera or looking at myself, in that fashion. So I always pick it apart when it's over, and wonder if I was clear. But
you did a good job. I watched I thought you did a very good job.
Okay, good. Thank you. So Brian Smith got the 2-pack of 1/4 inch compression with my machine. We'll get an update on timing for. Will we get an update on timing for Slim Gen? So can you just give us a quick walkthrough? So you have the Jenny, which was the original as far as I understand it.
That was the original.
Yep. And then what came next? The 1/8 inch?
The 1/8 inch compression bit, the mini Jenny. That was the second one that came.
Okay.
The next bit in the evolution of all this was the skinny Jenny, which is it's the 1/16 tapered ball nose. I don't know if you can see it very well, but that was the third one. Yep. And then after that was the down shears, the 1/8 inch down shear, which is the downtown Jenny, and then the 1/4 inch downtown Jenny. And then so my newest bit that I'm doing now, and again, this was from requests from you guys from the community, was a 1/8 inch down shear on a 1/4 inch shank. So this one was actually one of my test bits that I was using. Can you see it okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, my screen's all blurry, and I don't think I have good lighting in here, but so yeah, basically it's an 1/8 inch downtown Jenny on a 1/4 inch shank, and as of today, the bits came off the machine, and they were being laser engraved, laser marked, and so come Monday they'll be sent off to plating, and then as soon as I get them back from plating, I'll be able to start making deliveries. So come Monday, I'm going to open up the pre-orders, so that way I can just get an idea of what to plan for and know how much to pick up. And so to answer your question, Monday I'll start pre-orders.
So there is for those that haven't yet had the pleasure. So I think this is the same one that he was just talking about. Brand new. I haven't had a chance yet to use my. Is this the Skinny Jenny, the tapered? What is this one called? Yeah.
So that's the Skinny Jenny.
Okay. So if you guys can see it, I'm going to hold it up real close. And I apologize, I'm probably not going to get a great focus here. Explain to us, if you wouldn't mind, there's the shank, which, I'll call it gray, right? And then there is this what would appear to be gold. Why do they look different? Tell us why there's gold there.
So just the bare looking metal, that's just the raw carbide on the material. The gold shiny looking part, that's actually a zirconium nitride coating. And what's really good and unique about the zirconium nitride is it actually has a really high lubricity value. So when you're machining, what it does is it actually helps the chip evacuate from your cut and off your tool. And the thing that's really important about that is the faster you can get your chip away from your workpiece, the better it takes the heat away from the tool and away from your workpiece. So the number one thing that will make a cutting edge go bad on your tools is heat. So if you can better manage the heat, the longer your tools will last. And this coating specifically, once you get the feeds and speeds dialed in, it can increase the tool life up to 3 times. So that's what that gold color is. It's the zirconium nitride.
And I really didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I think it's important to remember when you're comparing bits, number one, pay attention to the geometry, how the bit is configured, right? But is it fair to say that this coating would be similar to, who's the guys with the multicolored, Amana, and then there's bits and bits. So they have some kind of coating, and I'm not going to get into the chemical, or whatever happens, right? But is that doing the same function as those other?
Same concept, okay. different technology.
Okay.
I think the Spectra coating, that rainbow looking coat, that was a technology that was developed a long time ago, and it works, you know what I mean? And it works well. And I think they actually started making their own specific line of their coating, and they made them specific for their bits. But this stuff, the zirconium nitride, and there's other stuff too. There's like DLC coating, which is diamond light coating. You can actually do a real diamond coating, which I do not recommend. I had some bits diamond coated one time, and it cost me like $120 for one bit.
Yeah, wow. So there's a point at which it doesn't pay, and diamond by itself, just say the word diamond and you're into a different category. Yeah.
The crazy thing is you diamond coat it and it'll last forever. It's super hard, but the problem is when it goes through the process, it actually tears down the cutting edge of your bit, so you actually have a honed edge instead of a nice sharp edge. And so the stuff that I was doing, I was cutting, and the bit would last forever, but I wasn't getting that really nice clean edge that I was looking for. I was having to go back and sand it, which is exactly opposite of what I want to do, but no, there's a lot to learn about different coatings. It's neat stuff.
Yeah.
So Cody, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a partner company that's doing your bit grinding for you?
Yep.
And is that done here in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's done right here in Mesa. Well, Tempe. Yep.
Across town, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, I work in Tempe. I live in Mesa, so. But the thing is in Phoenix, everything kind of blends together. It's just one big city.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But so those guys that I've been working with, they do all my custom port tools and custom geometry when we're doing stuff at work on our big machines, and we give everything made just here locally. And the cool thing is too that I use the same grade carbide on my bits, the Jenny bits, that we use on all of our aerospace stuff. So it's that same level of quality that I put into these.
Yeah. And I'll just chime in real quick and tell, I don't know, I'm still not used to this software, so I don't have a sense of how many people are still in the group here, but if you have questions for Cody, by all means, I threw him a message. He was, he had one of his kiddos in the bathtub and was nice enough to ask his wife to tag in and be able to join us. So, so I actually did a video. So the first thing I did was I did a short that was meant to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek, right? I got to tell you, so I ordered my machine in, and this was before I think they had found a new rhythm in the manufacturing of the machines, right? So I ordered, I believe it was in maybe late September of 20, and I got my machine late January of 21. And I had a lot of time, it felt like, to sit around and look at Amazon or so I got a ton of bits and bits for my handheld routers, right? Because I like the phrase that Cody uses, and it sounds a little funny, but lubricity, right? And any different kind of coating, and I'm not trying to have a chemistry lesson, but the end user sees, the cooler you can keep your bit, the longer it's going to last, which Cody mentioned, right? If you can get the heat away from the cutter, it's just going to last longer. So I had a lot of time to sit around waiting for my machine, and I ended up with an assload of worthless bits that I didn't put a lot of thought into it. I just, I'll probably need those and these and that. And, I ended up not needing many. And then when I got my machine, I put some of those bits to the test. And, some of the bits that I bought, which were Chinese bits, were supposed to be 1/8-inch bits in the shank. And I couldn't get any of them to actually hold in the collet. To test it, I used other 1/8-inch bits, and they did hold firmly in there. So then I did the smart thing and grabbed a set of calipers, and sure enough, they were not in tolerance for being that. But then I really kind of had this epiphany moment where I said, as just, and I don't care where you live, the U.S., Sweden, Australia, I don't care where you live, you should do everything you can to support your local economy. And Cody's bits are kick-ass. I love them. They have worked great. I still have the very first Jenny that I bought. I broke my second one, and it was my fault. I actually rammed it into something. But they have been great, and I have to tell you, again, so I love your entrepreneurial spirit, and I love the bits that you make, and that you have put a lot of thought into those, and I just think it's great, and I wish you all the success in the world, because I just love what you're doing. So let me catch up here, and Brian Smith says, Izzy is cool. Yeah, he's got some crazy inventions that he has made on his channel, and he's a very interesting guy. And then Mike Penson says, he dropped him off at the house, like 10 minutes apart in Chandler. Yep. And so that's awesome. Rick, thanks for the info. So great job explaining some of those features. This is my friend Mike Schmidt from Tennessee, and I just got to know, Mike, if you're still in the group, have you unboxed the damn Onefinity yet? Is it still in the corner? I mean, come on, we got to get going. I'm just teasing. He's a good guy. And Dave, I got to check out some of those Jenny bits. Dave, do me a favor. Email me your mailing address. I have some extras. I'm gonna send you a 1/4-inch end mill that I've got. I have a tendency to sit around and get bored, and I go, how many do I have? I should probably get another couple. So I'm gonna send you one. So Rick is asking if you make a flattening bit or recommend one.
I don't make a flattening bit. I think the flattening bit I bought was one of the Whiteside. I don't know the part number off the top of my head, but it's one that's often referred to in the groups. Matter of fact, I think I saw a post today, and Mitz, I think, suggested a nice Whiteside surfacing bit, just a 1-inch like fly cutter.
Yeah, so it's a Whiteside 6210. 6210, Rick, is the part number you'd like. If you like the idea of having a coated bit, there's also a company that I have a bunch of their bits for my handheld router and things that you wouldn't use on your CNC machine, and it's bitsbits.com, and they take Whiteside bits in some cases and apply, I think it's called an astro or astro coating or something. Same idea, like different chemistry. I don't know much about it other than they're coated. So you can either buy a 6210 from Whiteside, or you can look, if you're into that lubricitous nature of these coatings, you can look for it from bitsandbits.com as well. So Michael did initial an order of Jenny Bits and have countless hours on them, and they're still going strong. Highly recommend. So I'm with you, Michael. They just work, and did you earlier, I think it might have been Rick asked if you had a recommendation for a set of bits. Had you guys packaged together a little kit of some, like a starter kit on the Onefinity, like a bundle or something? Or do you have it on your website?
So Onefinity does bundles. They have like the 2 packs of each bit, and then I think one of them it's the Infinity bundle, and I think it's one of each. So that's what they're doing through their website. I just sell them individually right now. I don't have any, starter packs put together yet, but hopefully soon, man. We'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, if you want to get a bundle, I just go through Onefinity. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would tell you, I think that what a lot of people do is they buy bundle kits, and if you can imagine going to Home Depot, if you had a project for your handheld router, right, and you had to make a couple of, maybe you had to profile something a certain way, or maybe you were getting a something to make a dado with. Sometimes it's appealing to say, well, for $15 or $20 a piece, at Home Depot, I could buy that profile piece or a Cove bit or something. But, for only $44, I can buy this 6-pack of router bits. And my reality, I won't say for you, my reality it is I'm going to use 2 of them, and the other 4 are not in my wheelhouse. They're bits that I may not use. So you gotta know a little bit about the type of work you're going to do. I think if you're going to be a sign maker, or if you're going to be predominantly cutting pockets and profiles, those are a very different bit arrangement. So if there's a follow-up to those type of questions, if you're going to be a sign maker, or if you're doing furniture, or you're doing house numbers, or what's the jack-o'-lantern, what was those little light boxes people were doing, right? It totally depends on the type of work that you're going to do. So I don't know if I'm a fan of the whole like packs, right? Here's the ultimate starter pack, or I don't know. I think you might just be better off singling them out, and going to it. So Dan is asking if there's any plans for a larger ball nose or tapered ball nose bits.
I actually have a couple things I've been working on. I'm going to be releasing a 1/4-inch ball nose, ball end mill to go along with the 1/16 tapered ball nose I have. That one I've already kind of have in the works, and hopefully in the next 2 months, I want to be able to share it with everybody. So I got that one. But my next biggest project are the V-bits I've been working on. So I've been working on a 90-degree V-bit and a 60-degree V-bit. But the thing that's awesome about these is I've really played around with the tool geometry on these, and there's nothing like it in the market, like anywhere. So I've actually designed a 90-degree V-bit that's going to act like a down shear cutter, but still have the relief cuts in the bit that's going to eject the chips out. But the nice thing is you'll get a really nice clean cut on the top. And then what I've done is, it's all solid carbide. So I moved away from brazed carbide like you see on normal V-bits. Mine's going to be solid carbide, 3 flute. And another thing that I'm doing that's really, again, kind of thinking outside the box is if you can imagine like a peace sign, right? You have 3 lines going to the center of your circle. So imagine, those are the cutting flutes on your V-bit. Well, what I've done is I actually relieve 2 of those back, so only 1 flute goes to the center of the cutter. So the nice thing about that is when you start doing your V carve, the very center of it is going to cut like an engraving tool down at the bottom. and then the other 3 flutes are going to have a down shear force as it's cutting, removing all the material on the sides. So essentially, you'll get really, really crisp lines in the bottom of your V, and you should get really nice cuts on the top also because of the down shear effect.
Okay.
So in that one, I'm super, super excited for. I think it's going to be a game changer, honestly.
So I'm curious, with 3 flutes, that's 50% more cutters than some of the traditional ones that you see. So is that something that you would spin at a lower speed as a result of the third cutter?
Yeah, you would definitely spin it at a slower RPM because you have three flutes going in there and cutting. And I guess the reason why I decided to go with the 3 flute versus like a 2 flute is, one, I wanted to have that engraving effect at the very tip, and I couldn't do that with 2 flutes, so I had to use 3. And the other thing too is, if you're thinking about that bit spinning around, right? With 2 flutes, it's a lot more, like violent, because it's going 180 degrees and hitting it at whatever RPM. You know what I mean? Yep. So when you have 3 flutes, you actually balance it out, and you'll get a better finish. And you can run it at a lower RPM, or run it a lot faster.
So two flutes would certainly be scooping out more material per half revolution or per 1 revolution of each cutter. So yeah, that makes sense. I would imagine it would come out cleaner, I would think.
Yeah. So I had some test bits already made. I actually did a bunch of. I don't have one with me, or else I'd show you. But I had one made. It worked really, really well. I made a couple more changes to it, and I think next week I should be having more beta bits off the machine.
Cool.
So, yeah, I'm super excited for that. That's probably, as soon as I get my V bits out of the way, then I'll start focusing more on the 1/4-inch ball nose, or maybe a 3/16 ball nose, or whatever the community wants, really.
Yeah.
So
a 1/4-inch ball nose, I'm kind of curious about that. So, and that's what you said, right? So is this one, the mini Jenny, is it a 16th or is it an 8th?
The skinny Jenny is a 1/16th.
Okay.
1/16th ball.
Is there an 1/8 inch currently, or are you just going from a 16th to a 1/4? I don't know what. So I bought this because, like I said, I was sitting around and just dig your stuff, and I went, I don't know when I'm going to need one, but when I do, that's the one I want to be doing it with. And I still have not and nothing against it, I just haven't fit it into my workflow yet. But so I know people are going to use this for like 3D work, right?
Yep.
So is it fair to say that the 1/4-inch is just going to maybe have less detail available to it? Or would you? Okay, so that's just if you have rougher work or less fine work, maybe is the right way to say that.
There's a lot of different applications. I see people who do a lot of the catch-all trays.
Yeah.
People are making, and they use that big gigantic bowl cutter.
Yep.
Having a 1/4-inch ball end mill, you can go in there and rough everything out with like, say, a Jenny bit, really fast, and then just come in there and do a finish, cleanup pass around the edges. You'll still get that nice radius down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And so really there's just different applications and what you're trying to do, if you're trying to go faster or more production.
Yeah.
A lot of people use 1/4-inch ball end mills too for doing roughing on 3D carves.
Okay.
But there's other people that use it for 3D carves too. Really, it depends on what you're doing. If you need a lot of really fine detail, you don't want to use a 1/4-inch ball end mill. You'll want to use something like a skinny Jenny.
Yeah, so I can tell you that before Christmas I made 30 catch-all trays that were 2 inches thick, and I think I had a pocket that was about 1.5 inches or something. And yeah, that was a lot of work for that bowl bit to do. So I would be curious about an alternate method to do the same do the same task. So
and I don't know how expensive those bowl bits are. But I think that the 1/4-inch ball end mill, they'll be extremely competitive price wise, I think.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So I gotta tend to this cat again real quick.
There you go.
So Dan McKnight says I use the 1/4-inch ball nose for molding edges on. And do you guys see the? I don't know how the software works yet. Do you guys see the little notes that are coming across?
I saw the one from Dan McKnight.
Perfect. Okay. So if I step away, I want you to be able to. I just got to help this cat real quick. So I use the 1/4-inch ball nose for molding edges on plaques. Okay. Yeah, that'd probably be a great way to use it. So let me go tend to this, and you guys talk about something interesting for just a second. I'm sorry.
So Cody, I'm curious about your fun work. I mean, you're working yourself really hard to make bits and send them out to folks like me and our friends here tonight. Do you do some woodworking yourself? Do you have time for it at this point?
Man, you know what? So yes and no. I don't get to do. So I've been doing. I have a Onefinity, a Shapeoko. I have a laser. I do a ton of woodworking, but for the last 3 years, I haven't done a single project for myself. So, like I can't tell you how many flags I've built for people or done 3D projects for people. So I'm really busy with other people's stuff, just not my own. Every once in a while, I'll sneak something in for my wife, but that's few and far between. Unfortunately, she jumps all over me for that. But yeah, I do a ton of working.
I hope you get to the point where you can have a little fun on your CNC machine instead of working so hard all the time. So back to the V-bits, I was very interested in that. What do you predict? When will those hit the market? When will you have those available?
So if I get my beta bits next week, I'll need a little bit of time to put it through its paces. I need to, work on the feeds and speeds, make sure it cuts like it's supposed to. After I have a couple weeks of testing it, and also, I'm working with guys like Mitz and Lane.
Yeah.
I'll send them some bits, and they'll do some testing for me too. I'll get some bits out to them, but I really want to get them out to the masses like as soon as possible. I've been talking about these stupid bits forever, and I'm just ready to be done and just like release it.
So it sounds like maybe within the next quarter.
I'm hoping within the next 2 months I'll be ready to start selling.
Cool.
Yeah. That's my plan. I really want to get to that point. So it's important for me.
So Cody is being modest. So I've seen some of the work that he does, and it's actually very nice. And he has a really nice workflow on his work table where he's got jigs set up for highly repeatable work that he does. So I think for him, with his background and how well he thinks things through, he could probably get a lot more done than somebody like me who just figures it out every time I go to the machine, because he could plop it into his jigs and just put it right to work. So Cody does some great work with his machine. So
I love nerding out on it. I don't really look at it as work. I mean, even though I'm doing work for other people, I have a passion for it, so it's fun. Like when I'm making all those grips for my customer, I can't tell you how many grips I've made. But every single time, it's like I get excited. It's a new wood. It's a new something. You know what I mean? Like, it's fun. It's fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, we've been at this for a little while. What I would like to ask for, as we come to a close, unless there are more questions or just general chit chat. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, Dave Gatton has a channel and has had a channel for quite some time, and is the inventor of the Gatton CNC. And we connected before the holidays, I believe, about getting together sometime in January to. He's going to host tomorrow night at 9 on his channel, and has asked for, through the lens of a user, how's my experience been with Onefinity? He had heard about Onefinity and had a curiosity, as he explained it to me, he's really trying to broaden a little bit of his view, or the view of his channel, to include other machines and so forth. And so that's what tomorrow is going to be about, is I think just some general chat about what I have found so far with my machine, etc. So I'm curious for the group, as I understand it, we're going to be together for roughly an hour or however long it takes to answer any questions that come up. What would you like to see? So if you could rewind the clock back to your decision-making process, or if you had a friend that you were going to explain what's kind of neat or unique about your machine, specifically if you have a Onefinity, what led you to it, or what might have helped you in your decision-making process, right? Because I think that, I'm going to give kind of an overview of the machine and what might make it a little different than some of other, I guess I would call it hobby level or prosumer, or I don't know what you'd even call, a $3,000 machine. But, what kind of stuff do you think would be beneficial for the YouTube community to hear tomorrow about the Onefinity specifically? So I'll give a couple minutes for folks, because I know if you type like I do, it might take you a minute to tap that out. So while we wait for that, I'm going to catch this last question. Do you feel most people enclose their machine for sound suppression? I'll start, and then maybe you guys speak about what led you, if you did or didn't. The reason I built an enclosure, and as you can see currently, I do not have an enclosure, and that is not on purpose. That is, so I had the woodworker, and then I expanded to the journeyman, and unfortunately, I did not plan ahead when I built it for my woodworker, so it was only big enough for the woodworker. So when I got the journeyman, I rebuilt my table, and the enclosure no longer fit. It happened to catch me at a time in my workflow at my 9 to 5 where I didn't have a ton of extra time. And the way you translate that is my daughter moved to a new apartment, and I've built her a complete apartment full of furniture that preceded my need for taking the time to make the enclosure. So noise was not the reason that I did mine. I did mine for dust, and will do it again for that very same reason. This machine, I think, is very good at being precise and repeatable. And I just feel like if I don't do a good job keeping the dust out of the ball screws and all the places where, as an example, for the homing process, I want that all to be clean. So I wanted the dust to be controlled. And then, of course, for obvious health reasons, you don't want to breathe the dust that may be floating around. So noise wasn't my thing. It was more about dust. Cody and Alan, do you guys have yours or plan to have yours enclosed, or what are your thoughts?
I'll go answer you, JR. I'm going to leave mine open.
Okay.
I like the ability to get to all of the pieces and parts, and I like the ability to keep it clean. One of the downfalls of the one negative of the machine, and by the way, I don't see it as a huge one because I bought it, but is the dust in the drive systems. We've got the screws that get dust, and then the rails have dust on them, and so it's a constant fight to keep those things lubricated and cleaned up. And if I have my machine open and I can get to it, I think I'm going to do a better job in keeping it cleaned up, and it's going to give me less trouble in the long term. By the way, I do not have, nor do I intend to worry about the wiring. It's all open. I don't use anything other than just keeping it simple, and I don't find the noise to be a problem. So I'm with you about controlling dust, and I suspect I'm going to add some additional dust control to mine, but up to this point, it hadn't really been a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Cody, are you enclosed or not enclosed?
Mine is not enclosed, and So a couple things is noise is an issue for me. I have two little girls upstairs and a newborn. She's about 3 months old, so I have to minimize noise as much as I can. So I considered building an enclosure, but I live in Arizona and it gets so freaking hot in my garage. I decided not to do it because I didn't want to fry all my Onefinity controllers and you know what I mean. So I left mine open just to get better airflow. But what I did do to help manage, keep the noise pollution down, is I got a 80 millimeter spindle, and I got a nice jet dust collection system. And man, it literally cut the noise in half just by upgrading my spindle and getting a good dust collection system.
So even during the cutting, you're finding the spindle is quieter.
Oh my gosh. Like my spindle could be running right now and you would talk at a normal voice. Like It's that quiet. Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But it is funny though, because I do a lot of whiskey barrel wood, right? And so I'll be I've literally made thousands of these cubes, and I don't have an enclosure, but I still have my dust collection system. But usually I'll just open up the garage door and just blow everything out with like a little leaf blower. Well, the bad thing is all the whiskey barrel wood chips gets in the cracks of my driveway. And so when it rains at my house, it smells like I have a really bad drinking problem. Like I'm pretty sure my neighbors think I'm a huge alcoholic or something. But that's the only downside of not having the enclosure, is because all that whiskey barrel wood goes out in the driveway and the streets. So
okay. So Rick, I think you're going to get a variety of answers about that, and I think it's going to be what's important to you. When I had the enclosure on the first machine, and I should point out that I was using the Makita router, I didn't find that it reduced the noise very much. Now, I built mine out of 1/2-inch plywood, which, isn't very thick, and I didn't do any supplemental noise abatement type of material. So no sound deadening material at all. But again, that wasn't my goal. So hopefully, I don't know if you're in a garage, you have kids sleeping if your garage is attached, and if the kids' room was right next door to the garage wall, then that might be a thing. So Rick, if you're a graphic designer, man, you're gonna really, I think, have a leg up in that you probably are using some software and are used to some of the things that might go into designing a job within whatever piece of software you're going to use. I would suspect that we're going to see some really nice work of yours on the Facebook group, and I'm excited for you and can't wait to see it. So BB, is there any good resources for a multiple bit job, how to set up V-carve, homing, etc.? I can't seem to figure out how to get a second bit working. Okay, so sometimes this comes up, and I don't know, and it might require a follow-up note on your part. If you have a multiple bit project, so what I mean is if you're going to cut out a pocket and then V-carve inside or around that pocket, so you have an end mill and you have a V-carve bit. I've seen it where some people struggle saying, well, I don't have enough Z area to change the bit. And the reason usually that happens is that people are not breaking the tool selection into two different tool paths. And so what I would do to address that is, let's assume that I was making a pocket in a project, and then I was going to V-carve something around it. The 1/4-inch end mill, let's say that I was going to make the pocket with, I would design that pocket with that tool, and I create that tool path, and that's where that tool path stops, right? And I save that tool path. And then I go into a V-carve tool path, and I do, let's say I was doing some filigree around the edge or carving an initial in it. That bit would be its own tool path. And when that happens, when the 1/4-inch end mill is done making the pocket, the router, your Z, will retract up out of the work, and it will go to the home position where you'll have all the room in the world to change the bit. But if you combine those two bits into the same toolpath, it's only going to come up enough to be at your safe Z height, right? And it won't allow you the room. So the general rule of thumb, and guys, help me if you have a different way to interpret what's being said, is that if you have a 1/4 inch end mill, a 1/8 inch end mill, and a V-carve bit, let's say, that are all part of the same project, you need to make 3 different tool paths, a tool path for each of those tools. Do you feel like that's the problem that he's maybe bringing up from your experience, guys? Or is there a different angle there?
I do the same thing. I set all my stuff as its individual tool path.
Yeah, so he's commenting here, oh, okay, I put them all in the same file. So yeah, that's probably what you're experiencing then. And it doesn't take very long to make individual tool paths. I don't think it adds any real time to the overall job. And frankly, you could go cut your first piece as your 1/4 inch end mill pocket. You can go turn that loose on the machine, and while it's doing its thing, go back to your computer and make the other tool path, and you've lost no time whatsoever.
So, JR, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Are you using, what software do you use?
V-carve Pro.
Okay, you're using V-carve.
Yeah.
So I use Carveco, and I don't know if V-carve if it works the same way or not, but when I'm working on a project that has several tools, I can do all my programming in one program, but on each tool I can individually save just the tool path of each tool, and I can export.
Okay.
I can export each tool out by itself, but still have my entire program done at once.
Okay.
I don't know if V-carve has that option or not, but
let's see if I can explain. I wish that I had installed V-carve on this computer, but I didn't. So let's say I have in my design software, I have the border of the project, I have a pocket somewhere in the center, and in the center of that pocket I have the initials JR, right? So in V-carve I would identify my piece, I would then identify the vector that's going to be the pocket, right? And then I have the vector of the initials that I wanted to V-carve. So you would click this vector for the pocket, and you would click pocketing toolpath, go through the settings, depth of cut, how many passes, all that stuff, and then you would save off that toolpath, and then you would come right back once that's done, and then you just select the V-carve as a separate operation, go through the settings for that, save that toolpath, and that's how that happens. It sounds like it's a little different in Carveco.
Yeah, well, it's similar but different.
Okay.
Same exact concept.
Yeah. So I actually have a copy of Carveco, and I have lacked the time to get in there and play with it, because what I understand, so there's strengths and weaknesses and everything, right? I understand that V-carve is considered by many people to be better at 3D work than V-carve is, which I don't know if that's true or not, because I haven't messed with 3D very much. So, but I've got it because of that, and I just haven't had the time to properly investigate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the same boat. I need to get V-carve because I need to get some tool databases for V-carve set up for everybody. So that's going to probably be my next investment, I think, is getting V-carve just so I can have it.
Sure. And Dan adds, dust collector makes more noise than the router. Yeah, in a lot of cases, they can be really noisy. And Michael's bouncing for the evening. And yeah, take care. And yeah, so I think to close out, BB, I think you just put your different tools into a different tool path and you'll be all over it. And Steve Rudak, hey buddy, how are you? And yeah, it's our pleasure. So let's close this out and just say, so is there anything on anybody's mind, like what would you want to hear tomorrow as I get together with Dave Gatton and just kind of explain, what the Onefinity is? His audience is going to range and not be a Onefinity specific audience, but a CNC hobbyist. What feedback would you guys have for what would you want to see get covered, machine differences or otherwise? All right, thank you, Dan. You have a good night too. Okay, and Hughes paid for Carveco, but has only used Carbide. Is Carbide a separate?
Yeah.
Isn't that somebody's proprietary deal? One of the other manufacturers.
So Carbide Create is the software that you get with like your Shapeoko.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was resident with one of those machines there. So,
But
yeah,
you can export G code from it as long as you have the right post processor. I mean, you can send it to the Onefinity.
yeah,
But
okay. So does anybody have any thoughts about what you think, so obviously I'm going to talk about what I think are the differences, no V wheels, no belts, the sealed bearings, no actual hard, limit switches and, the sensing that it does for homing.
JR, for me, one of the big pluses was the stiffness of the machine,
yeah.
the rigidity that
Mhm.
it has.
So
Because
in my research, I want to ask you guys this, right? Because I have my own idea of why it would be that way, but I'd love to hear your guys' input. When I talked to local people who owned both Shapeco's and the other one that I forget, right?
X-Carve?
They would say that they were upset because they would see people, flexing on the internet saying, "Oh, I'm running 200 inches a minute, I'm running 150 inches, and I can get this carve done in X number of hours." They would try to, bump their machine up to something anywhere close to that, and they ran into, and I don't know exactly because that was a year and a half ago, right? When I was asking this question, so, but they would basically, their carve would come out like shit. It would be, you'd lose steps, or what I think might have probably happened was the belt would skip a tooth or stretch. I don't know what. And my feeling is that rigidity means that you can push this machine to a faster feed rate than maybe some other competitors. Is that kind of the main benefit that you guys see of the rigidity, or what else is going to be the benefit of that rigidity?
Well, for me, it was about if I have a file or a design that uses multiple tools, I want the ability for it to be very repeatable,
Yep.
and that I also want to be able to put some force into the machine from either a spindle or a router, whatever you're using. And there are some programs out there, I'm sure you've seen them, that actually calculate the forces that are put on the router bit with certain chip loads and all of that. And so I felt like the design of the machine was a little bit more rigid and robust than some of the others that I saw. I had the benefit, by the way, of going and looking at a couple of machines that are here in my area that people that I know own, and I won't be critical of any of them, but I just thought that the Onefinity was a superior design using the the hardened steel tubing and the
Yeah.
linear bearings and the way that the drives are set up. I thought it was a superior mechanical design, and the value that you got for the money that you spent. You got a lot for the bucks.
Yeah.
You do inherit the little bit of making sure you keep it clean and you keep the sawdust out of the bearings, et cetera. But I probably would do that anyway. I'm a little bit of a neat freak to begin with, so I don't like nasty equipment. I tend to clean it up when I get finished with it, so that's not a problem for me. But
Yeah, I think that dust concern would be at least as important with the other design, right? So with the little V wheels, right?
yeah,
So here was the other challenge that I had, right? So, and I know that they don't use 80/20, but they're using whichever one, or
it's
maybe
very
both of them.
similar. Yeah,
They're using some type of aluminum extrusion. Now, I had a different grade of that stuff when I built stuff with that before, but that stuff is very prone to twist and bow in its nature, right? Now, again, maybe the stuff I had wasn't high grade, and maybe the stuff they use is, but I figured that the compounding error that could be there between, an aluminum extrusion, then a wheel, then a belt, and then any dust in there. I felt like, and maybe, and I'm not an engineer, I want to say that up front, but I just felt like the compounding errors of those type of designs was going to be far greater than this design, that I ended up choosing. So, I don't know.
I think you're spot on, JR.
Yeah.
You
Any thought? Okay. All right. Well,
Well, one thing I've noticed too, so I have a belt-driven machine of the other brand that a lot of people use.
yeah.
And I use it for a long time, and it's worked great for me. But man, dealing with those V wheels. So talking about the aluminum extrusions, so on those rails, it actually has a V that those V wheels ride on, and
Yep.
those V wheels, I think they're made out of Delrin. And
Yeah.
what I've experienced a lot is as you're running your machine, you'll actually get a buildup of crud on the anodized aluminum because I think they put a type 3 hard anodized on there to protect it and keep it from corroding. Well, the problem is after you're running it, that stuff will actually build up on there. So as your gantry is moving, in the X and Y direction, it's not smooth. It's like going over a dirt road sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're not on top of it and you're not keeping it clean and making sure, I had like 220 grit sandpaper block that I would use, and every single time I'd run it, I would clean it, make sure it was nice and smooth, because it would show up in your cuts. Especially if you're doing like a 3D carve and it's going back and forth in X, and your V wheels are all built up with stuff. You'll see lines and ridges in your carve,
Okay.
and I don't have any of those issues with the Onefinity.
Yeah.
The rigidity is there. Like you were saying, just having the linear bearings and linear rails, it's just a solid, good design. Matter of fact, that's why I decided to go with the Onefinity. Is I had my other machine and it was working okay, but I wanted to push it faster, harder, stronger, and I had it maxed. Like I couldn't go any farther.
Yeah. So
So
Steve,
that's what led me to Onefinity.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna tell you, so I'm in a wood guild, right, in the Charleston Wood Guild, and we get together, and it might be lathe turning one, and it's all pre-COVID. They quit meeting for a while, and I went and visited guys who had those other machines, and I didn't know what I know today, so I don't think I knew all the questions to ask, but from their results and from their frustrations, you could just see that design was not going to lend itself to being true all the time, right? So I guess I took a swing, and I think I swung right. So Steve says one thing I've been noticing is the lower level software limits at 26-inch for a hobby CNC. So I know Vectric desktop has a 24-inch limit. Do you guys know if there's a limit on some of the other softwares?
On Carveco, you can set it to whatever you want. It can be 96 inches by 96 inches if you wanted to.
Steve, why don't you tell us what, if you know what software you might be referring to, and maybe we could make a suggestion. But yeah, I don't know if it's a option that you need to pick in your software, or maybe you have a.
Motion detected at the front door.
Sorry.
Okay, Steve says Carveco is only if you pay them the premium. $250 a month. Damn, I need to get in the software business. $250 a month.
I use a Carveco Maker. It's like $15 a month, I think, is what I pay.
And you don't have those limits?
I don't think I've ran into limits on the size of my carve. Because every time we start a new project, at the very beginning, it'll ask you how big your model is going to be. And that's when you say it's going to be like, well, the size of your machine, 32 inches by 32 inches or whatever you want it to be. But I don't know. I'll have to look into that because I don't think I've run into that issue.
Okay.
I wish I could share a screen. But anyways.
Can you? I don't know if that's so. I apologize. This is the first day I'm using this streaming software, so you might very well be able to. I don't know.
Let me open Carveco real quick.
So
Yeah, I think Hugh's making a good point there, JR, about the simplicity of the setup.
Yeah.
If you think about how easy it is to set the Onefinity up, get it squared up and running, it's a piece of cake.
Yeah, for sure. That was one thing that Guy said. Now, I wasn't necessarily turned off with a big time investment per se. Some of those other machines, though, they say they're 12 hours of labor. That by itself wasn't going to turn me off. Like, that wasn't nearly as important to me as the belts and the wheels issue was. Yeah. Once I saw that stuff in action, I said, "Oh no, that's not gonna be in my shop." So, but it's a huge benefit for sure that it's easy to build. So, Steve, do you guys sense a desire with the rigidity of the 150 to offer a more robust option for routers compared to an X-Carve or a Shapeco? So I don't know if the Shapeco or the X-Carve have an option for a more robust router, and they probably do based on your comment, but if there is that option, I'm just not familiar with it. So do you, so Steve, maybe put a comment, I don't know, are they able to hold a bigger, fatter, more horsepower router as a stock configuration or what? Or maybe you guys know, I sure don't.
Well, I know a lot of guys who put spindles on their Shapeocos and maybe even their X-Carve, I'm not sure, but I know that both the Shapeoco and the X-Carve have just recently come out with a new machine to compete with the Onefinity. I know those are a little bit bigger and more rigid. So yeah, I know that they're definitely trying to keep up.
Yeah. Yeah, these guys at Onefinity, they have definitely disrupted this market. There's no question. No question.
By the way, JR, one of the big advantages that I saw with the Onefinity was the ease of installing a spindle.
Yeah.
And so when I bought my machine, I bought the spindle mount as well. I have not yet put a spindle on there. As a matter of fact, you and I had the conversation early on about how one should approach that. And I've got a lot of machines here in my shop that are variable speed driven, and they're, with VFDs. So that didn't worry me too much, but I think for me, it was an advantage that I just started out with a router. Doesn't cost much money. Get all of the kinks worked out, and then put a spindle on it. And I'll be installing a spindle fairly soon.
Yeah, my approach to that was real simple. I wanted to make sure the machine worked as it was originally designed, so I went with the router up front. But again, during that 4 months that I waited for the machine, a spindle was sitting here before the Onefinity arrived. Now the bummer is that when I built my cable, I hogged out too much of the, so I used a shielded cable from Automation Direct, and I hogged out too much of the aviation connector to hold the sheathing of the cable that I bought, and my aviation connector failed, and I took it off and slapped the router back in, and I already have a different aviation connector that's better, but I just haven't put it back together yet. So, but the damn Makita has done things that I am surprised. I did a 14-hour carve with it once, and I've had no problems with it at all. So Carve Code Maker says 26 by 26 in its comparison. Yeah, so I don't know if that's maybe a version thing, right? So maybe there's Carveco, and I'm making this up, Carveco Lite, Carveco Pro, Carveco Maker, Carveco Plus. I'm not sure why that, why that would be. Carveco or Maker Plus, reasonable. Yeah, so I think the Carveco, and I'd have to look on a different computer, but I think the Carveco that I bought for comparison purposes was an annual license, and or maybe it was a perpetual. I don't know. It was $600. Whatever I bought, it was about $600. So I don't know. I turned it on once. I went, yeah, that looks cool. I closed it and I went about my day. So I haven't been back to it. Did you able to figure out the screen share thing?
Yeah, but my computer's acting funky right now.
Okay.
So I was trying to get it to load, but I'm having trouble.
Okay.
So if I can get it working, then I'll try and share my screen.
Okay.
But either way, even if I can't, I'll look into it after we finish here, and because I'm curious to see what it says. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good.
All right. Thank you.
Well, man, this was fun. Thanks everybody for coming, and especially on short notice, and for you couple of guys to share your experience and knowledge, and for everybody that attended. I thought it was a fun way to, spend a little time together. So very much appreciate it. And okay, you stay cool, you stay warm. Or no, you're down in Alabama.
I am, but it's about 30 degrees outside.
Okay,
tonight.
so
Yeah.
you're a little closer on the thermometer to me. So
Flannel.
yeah, okay. Well, you guys take care, and we'll see you soon, and hope everybody joins us tomorrow at 9 on Dave Gatton's show. So thank you guys. Everybody take care.
Thanks, JR.
All right, thank you.
Cody, good to see you. Take care, man. Best of luck.
Too. Thank you. It was really good chatting with you guys.
Take care, everybody.
All right. See ya.